Welcome back to In the Kitchen. We've got the few of the head chefs over at Funnel Chef today. Got Mr. Scott Concannon, Mr. Mike Tiber, and myself, Chris Terry. So, guys, we were actually talking a little bit earlier, and I thought I'd just jump into it because there's a few things that we were discussing that I think, or maybe I could be wrong, I don't know, but I think a lot of people listening to this might be interested in. And it was more of, I don't want to say issues because this could go positive or negative, but we were discussing like what it actually means to have that entrepreneurial mindset. And this could go for people who are just getting started in their business, whether it's them, leaving their job, starting a new business, or it's them branching off, starting a new product, a new brand. But Scott, you had a pretty interesting take on it in terms of like what you think it means to have that entrepreneurial mindset. You want to go into a little bit more detail on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when you're, especially if you're making the transition from, let's say, you're corporate, or not even just corporate, but you have a huge passion and you love helping people, or you love knitting scarves. It really doesn't matter. You have this passion, or you have this ability to actually help people. I think the fallacy a lot of people run into is they believe that if I have the passion, then automatically, then I'm going to be successful in what I do. Meaning people will see my passion, they'll understand my passion, they'll know that I'm there in their corner 100% of the time, and I'll probably win out more times than not. But I actually thought about this and wanted to chat about it because Mikey over here actually sparked my mindset on it a few weeks back when we were just chatting about mindset of entrepreneurs, those we've worked with, those who've we've prospected to work with, and anything in between. It's, what are those qualities that really defined the entrepreneurial mindset? More importantly, those who are able to succeed, not the ones that, are able to generate $1,000 here and there and create a nice little hobby for themselves. But what is the differentiator between the lady or gentleman who actually takes their business from 0 to 6, 7, 8 figures? And it's the grind and knowing that you're going into the grind. Like as an entrepreneur, you got to know that you're going into the proverbial meat grinder, that there's going to be how many people have you ever chatted with that we've worked with that are at 7, 8 figure statuses that say, it was really easy. I just opened my doors one day and then we had a flood of customers, never had an issue arise. And more importantly, we never had a problem.
Yeah, I don't think that exists.
No.
Yeah, never. It's kind of comes with the territory, right? If most people there's nothing you can really say to someone that hasn't seen it, just how much is going to come their way. And so much from so many different areas. You really do have to wear so many hats if you're trying to do it all yourself, which is, one of the main things we talk about, right? Focus on what, kind of stay in your lane and wrap yourself with good people. And you read tons of books, listen to tons of podcasts. People say this over and over and over again. Yet 75% of would-be entrepreneurs, haven't had that light bulb turn on yet. So yeah, you gotta kind of pick your battles and find some good people to support you in them. It's the best way I can say it.
Yeah, I always thought, you said one thing to me that always stuck out, and I thought it was pretty funny at the time, but it is true. It's when hardship happens, when you're an entrepreneur or you're in business and you're even established, what's your mentality once that hardship happens? You get punched in the nose. Are you the guy or girl who's willing to do anything to make your business work? Like you mentioned to me, hey, did you sell something? Did you pawn something off to make ends meet just for the next 30, 60 days? Did you sell a property? Did you go out and work at McDonald's? Something of the nature, so you're able to kind of live, but with the mindset of, I'm going to do everything that is needed to happen to actually succeed in this thing called business. And I love the way you actually projected that a few weeks back, because it is true. The guys or girls who are successful are man, I lived on my buddy's couch for 6 months It's like, oh, you did? Like, I thought you just lived in that $13 million mansion.
What's that lady's name that made Spank? She's on Shark Tank, the blonde one. You know, she was at home for a year when she came up with that idea before she announced it to anybody, and then grinded for several years before she left her parents' home. Right. It really is. So it's two parts. One, you have to take responsibility for everything. Everything's your fault. There's no way that you can escape that. The second you start projecting and blaming others, you're not fixing the problem. And then the second piece is, yeah, whatever it takes. You know, and if you're not ready for that and you're not in a position for that, then you're probably not in the best position to break into entrepreneurship. I mean, it's that really that simple. It's not for everybody, unfortunately.
Great.
Yeah, and I think setting
go for it, Chris. Yeah, we've been
setting,
talking.
setting expectations accordingly, you know, and I'm not saying this to sound like David Goggins or someone pushing some hardcore motivation at you, but, you know, setting the expectation for yourself of that it's not going to be easy, right? And you shouldn't expect that it is, because then if you go into it with the expectation of that this isn't going to be easy, not everything is going to work out perfectly, you're not going to, it's not going to be a sucker punch when it comes to issues, right? It happens. And, one of my favorite books is a book that Ryan Holiday wrote. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. And it's just, the obstacle is the way, right? Like you've got to climb that hill. If you're walking this path going up a mountain and there's this giant boulder in the middle of the path, so what are you just going to turn around and leave, or are you going to try to find a way around it, or are you going to try to get a stick and knock it off the path? So, and that is, Scott, you kind of mentioned it, but it's that quote from Mike Tyson is, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right?
Yeah.
And if you're going into a boxing match, like you better be expecting you're going to get punched in the mouth one time, right? And that's kind of what business is as well. You're in the ring, hopefully you're not just actually physically getting punched in the mouth, but whether just, metaphorically, if you're getting punched in the mouth, are you going to have issues that happen? And, if you expect that to happen and you know how to react to actually fix the problem, right? Maybe you need a duck next time, right? Or maybe you need a block, whatever it is, but it's, going into it, the mindset of that things aren't going to be easy, and that's okay, because that's just normal. It's not just you, everyone has issues.
Well, frankly, nothing worth doing is easy. That's one of the reasons when it comes to entrepreneurship. If you guys are familiar with Jack Dorsey, he's the guy that created, Twitter originally. His statement is do less and do it well. So if you're focusing on one area of your business and one problem set, there's less things that can punch you in the mouth, right? If you're working with a great marketing agency, then you're probably not going to get punched in the mouth on the marketing front. If you're working with a great sales team, you're probably not going to get punched in the mouth on the sales front. They are. It doesn't mean that you don't have to be present, project managing, and know your business, but less is more. Focus on what you know well and where you can provide value. And if you don't know what that is, then you probably should do a little bit more research before jumping into the entrepreneurial Shark Tank.
Yeah, and something also, I think this comes with having an entrepreneurial mindset is that, you should be a student as well. Kind of like you mentioned, you can do your research, but, you're not going to know everything, right? And no one does. So having that mindset of being like a student where your brain's like a sponge and you're here to absorb, hiring a coach, like a consultant or a mentor, I think that's part of it as well. Even if you look at, bigger Fortune 500 companies, there's a ton of consulting work going on there as well. Like it's not just you, right? Every company, it's having another eye come in, look things over for you, give you some advice, see what you're doing, see what you're not doing. Even if it's a small business and you're a solo entrepreneur, I think that's maybe even more important there, because you don't have as many other voices around you. And you definitely don't have as many other voices around you that are actually going to be affected by your decisions. So I think thinking like a student, using your mind like a sponge to absorb everything you can, and investing in working with a coach or a consultant or even just a mentor, right? And I know that's maybe a bit self-promotional, right? Because if people listen to this, if they're not as familiar with who we are over at Funnel Chef, well, we work with coaches, consultants, and agency owners to help them implement proven recipes for success into their business, which in turn does help them attract more clients, actually bring in more profit for the business and more revenue. And doing all this with, while avoiding guesswork and using proven systems and processes that do help you reach those goals. So a bit self-promotional there in a way, but at the same time, I do think it's, even for us, same way is important, just speaking for myself, I know every client we've worked with, like we've, at least just for me, I don't want to speak for you guys, but I've learned something from pretty much everyone who we've worked with. So I think it's a two-way street. We help them out in their business, but we've also learned some things from them as well. And it's things that, if you're thinking like a student, using your mind like a sponge, you're going to soak that knowledge up, and then, hopefully it stays with you for a while.
So
Right.
I'd like to add one thing to that real quick. And Scott, sorry for jumping on top of you. That doesn't mean listen to everyone. Okay. Your mother, brother, sister that's still working at the car wash probably isn't going to give you the best business advice. Your, cousin that is a professor, even though he may be brilliant or she may be brilliant, is not going to be the best person to give you entrepreneurial advice. And just because if you can't afford a top-end consultant or, someone like us, that doesn't mean there's no resources available for you out there, right? There's tons of free or subsidized resources from the Small Business Administration that people can reach out to, and local communities, things of that nature. You start with what you can or where you can, and then you upgrade when you're, it's a possibility, which that's why usually people that are working with us are kind of past that initial offer stage, and at least have an idea of the solution and the market that it serves.
Yeah, I don't know, not to beat a dead horse, but I always think it's funny. Like, okay, you but the first 18 to 22 years of your life, you go to school, or you learn, or you're learning something. If you play sports, you got a coach, you got a trainer, you got XYZ teaching you how to run, inside zone or throw a baseball, everything in between. But as soon as you turn 22, you know everything. So you don't need any more support or help from anybody, because at that juncture, you've literally mastered the universe. And I always think that's prevalent in like business, is that like, yeah, the top people in their industries or field typically have someone in their corner. It could be a strong spouse, could be a consultant, could be something, but they have something where they're able to learn, experience, gain knowledge. Because I think, like, I know we'll talk about it in a bit, but some of the factors that stop a lot of entrepreneurs is that education mindset of learning new things or getting more experience or bringing in experience to quicken the pace, like seems to kind of lose its like flavor once you get out of school. Like once you're out of college, you got it. Like, and then if you go into business for yourself, you apparently got it. Like, I know I didn't. I went in business for myself, got punched right in the face about just a couple weeks in. I'm like, this is gonna be fun. But then what did I do? I turned around and actually asked the people that were successful, like, how are you doing this? And more importantly, like, how are you going about it with your system or your process or your sales or marketing? And like you guys are way better sales reps than I am, because I'm just an analytically boring guy. So yeah, we could talk systems, processes all day long, but that's just my shtick. So I know for a fact that if I like grow and scale my business, I need to go find a better position oriented person, right? I mean, I can tell you with full certainty, my coaches in college football never once asked me to throw a football, for good reason. So, but you find the right people to put in those positions, or you learn a new skill set by bringing in someone who can help you, like a trainer to lose weight, or a mindset coach to get you on the right path, or a sales trainer, so you learn the 5 steps to be able to close, whatever it is. But it's if you're not in that growth mindset, or hey, what did I do? Or more importantly, can you look at your business from a 10,000-foot view constantly? Most of us cannot. Then how are you ever going to make those pivots or those necessary changes to actually implement what's going to work for you?
Yeah, and going back to that Mike Tyson quote, right? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Well, you know, pretty safe to say that Mike Tyson hired a coach, right? He probably worked with multiple trainers and coaches. And if you are thinking about your business as stepping into the ring, you should probably hire a coach as well, right? Same with you, right? You're going to have your football team going live, playing on Sunday, and there's no coach on the sideline helping to call plays, as well as helping him practice, right? Because that's just as important as game day. You're just not going to have the same level of success as someone who is taking advantage of all of that help, all of that knowledge.
Right. I mean, Jack, I was gonna say Jackie Moon didn't start winning as a player coach until he brought in someone else to help him coach.
Yeah, Woody Harrelson, right?
Yeah, go Trops.
That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. Well, I think it's also fair to say that just a true entrepreneur knows that even if it doesn't work out exactly the way that he wanted to or she wanted to the first round or the first game, they don't just give up. They get back in, they assess, they make tweaks, and they go back in there. If you're running Nick Saban Alabama football plays in the NFL, your running backs ain't gonna last too long. It's you're gonna have to make some tweaks and changes. You may be the best in one world, and that may work perfectly for it, but you got to be flexible enough to adjust and go back in there. So yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that dogged focus and determination, and also, disciplined review of your results is part of what gets you there. Part of what gets successful ones there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think this is a pretty smooth transition into something else we were discussing, which are, some different factors that, are limiting entrepreneurs in terms of how much money they're making in their business. And I think a big one is, limiting beliefs, right? I think that some people, and it just happens naturally, I think, as a person, right? If you see someone else having success, you're instantly going to start comparing yourself to them, right? And that's, even if that's natural and your brain does that, that isn't always the best thing to do, right? Just if you see Russell Brunson having success, that doesn't mean that you can't also have success, right? You don't have to be Russell Brunson to have success. And that is where, all the clients that we work with, we're there to help them take the guesswork out of it, right? So you don't have to be Russell Brunson. You don't have to be Gordon Ramsay. You can just take proven recipes and processes that we already know works. And then as long as we break it down, analyze it, we have the right ingredients, we follow a step-by-step process, we can have success there as well. So I think that limiting beliefs is what holds a lot of people back, not even just in business, but in life in general. But, sometimes taking a step back and looking at the situation from an outside point of view is helpful as well, because we're all guilty of, and maybe not guilty, but we're all going to think about things from our point of view, our situation, right? And it's not always the best point to look at it sometimes. You want to see it from your point of view, but maybe you want to see it from the point of view of your neighbor across the street as well.
So, when you talk about Russell Brunson, what works well for Russell Brunson today is probably not what was working well for him when he started. The fact is that there's a whole set of different circumstances that make, going back to football, that make one play the right play to run and the right routes to run versus another situation where it's a different play and different routes. We talk about Russell Brunson run challenges or Grant Cardone run challenges. Challenges are great. They're a great way to capture audience, a great way to transition them. And yeah, we have a recipe for that. If you don't have an audience already, though, if you don't already have a community, whether that be directly or indirectly, through somebody else, then you're probably better suited using a slightly different route, using a slightly different recipe to develop your community before trying to utilize, a challenge, or something of that nature. I mean, how many times we've seen something like that before, Chris?
Yeah, no, a lot, right? And that's the same thing like you mentioned with, you're at college in Alabama, you can run these plays and it works great at that level, but that's not the exact same plays you're running in the NFL. And I think being self-aware and understanding that, right? And there's a lot of different recipes for success. And one question we always work through with any of our clients is, what's the best recipe for you today? It doesn't mean it's going to be the best recipe for you, 18 months from now, but based off of where you are today, you can look at, okay, what ingredients do you have? What recipe makes sense for you? But then you can also look at, there's other recipes you can make. Maybe you just need a few more ingredients. And then you look at time, you can go out, plant that in your backyard, plant a garden, wait 18 months, probably not that long for something to grow in your garden, but in your business, maybe it's a little bit longer. And then you can implement that recipe, or, sometimes you can just go to the market and pick some things up. But, it definitely is. I know, Mikey, you and I, we were at Funnel Hackers Live. This was a couple years back, but we went there with a client that we were working with. And what award was it that he got?
We got a 2CC and a 2CCX award, both. So we got two 2 comma club awards, and then one 2 comma club X award, which is 10 million in sales. So we actually walked with 3 plaques, I think, that year.
Yeah, and it was interesting seeing there because there's a mix of people, right? There's the award that we got. Obviously, that's most people get the other award before that. But it's interesting seeing, and again, that was, part of growth, right? Someone, they start, especially if they're doing anything through ClickFunnels, right? You kind of want to aim for that first plaque first, right? Then you can move on to the second one. We maybe jumped a little bit faster, but at the same time, I think it's, it's setting expectations accordingly and knowing, okay, what do I need to get here? And then once I'm here, what can I do to get to the next place?
Or it's like, who do you want to emulate in your business or in life? It's, if you're at step 1, you don't want to be looking at the guy at step 35 and trying to copy him. There was 33 steps in between there that you haven't taken yet. You should be looking at the guy on step 2 and saying, okay, what do I need to do to be more like him? And then when you're at step 2, step 3, just keep looking up at the guy right above you. How can you do it better? What can you do the same? And how can you do it faster and keep your keep to your model?
So. Yeah, also just for safety, right? If you're not looking at the step in front of you and you're looking 30 ahead, you might trip.
Most people do. Good call.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's always just knowing that like everything takes time. Like you don't become great at what you do or run an 8-figure agency or, get to like mergers and acquisitions, like the ultimate scale without, getting bumps and bruises and taking things one step at a time. Right. You don't get those intricate pass plays put in day 1 in camp. It takes time. You got to run and you got to run the same play over and over and over until you get the KPIs, until you get the results. So then you can make your pivots. So you can make your changes in your business plan. And I always find that to be a pretty big shocker for a lot of people is when they get into this, or let's say they've even been doing it for a few years, that they get frustrated with running the same play over and over. Or a new entrepreneur, they'll run the same play like 3 times or the same recipe for a week. And then they'll say, man, that didn't work. So I need to change everything out. I'm like, well, how many people did you talk to? They're like 3 people. They said no. Like, okay, well, that's not a big enough pool. You need to get enough information so then you can like statistically make a good decision, right? Empirically and make data driven decisions. But at the same time, like if you start seeing that success because you've been consistent with something and you're listening to your target market and you're hearing their pain points, so you can continually shift your services and your message to match that, then the next evolution is not just doing the same thing. Like you need to evolve in business, right? If you do organic outreach on LinkedIn and that's the only route you do, you're going to hit a plateau. Or what happens if LinkedIn change the terms and policies? Then you get hit like with a true like rock face, you just fall on your face. You have to start over. So it's diversifying how you're getting your message out. And I think that's one we've seen a lot where people are like they start seeing success, and instead of reinvesting back into themselves or taking their message and putting it on more of an omnipresence or multiple channels, they hoard it. They hoard the resources and don't use that as the next evolution in their business.
So you said two things that are, right on point. One is too many entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs make decisions and trying to implement changes in their business without having enough time to see if the actual effects and if it works, but also B, having the right data, measuring the right KPIs and the right metrics to determine if it's a positive or negative. Unless you run that same play 2,000, 3,000 times, you're just not going to know. How many calls do we usually want to see before we're going to make any type or take any type of position as to whether, a sales process is best or not? 100, 200? I would rather see 2,000 over, 20. So yeah, change is the enemy of productivity. So when you do have something that's working, you really want to dive into it. That being said, like you were saying on the diversification front, if you have all of your business coming from one source, you're at the mercy of that source. You're on a one-legged stool, and everything comes to an end at some point in time. So you mentioned LinkedIn, when they went from 700 a week to 100 a week new connections, that severely chopped down the viability for that to be a scalable, marketing channel just through direct messaging and organic. I personally like a 60-30-10 approach. 60% of my efforts to my main source, 30% to my secondary that complements it, and 10% trying new things, which that's a Google time management practice, but I apply it to marketing.
Yeah, I've played a lot of Madden in my life, and the halfback sweep was always good to me. I'd average about 7.5 yards per play when I called that. But sometimes you want to mix in that play action as well, get a pass off. So I think that applies to your business also. If like, for example, organic outreach, if that's your halfback sweep and you're having a ton of success with that, that's great. Don't stop doing it. But also, you need to mix something else in, because what's going to happen when your opponent figures out, well, this person, they're just running a halfback sweep every single play, it might not work as well. And, in business, maybe you don't necessarily have like an opponent, like you don't have like your one nemesis, right, who you're going after, who's going to stop your organic outreach. But, from the same mindset of, you don't want to be sitting on a one-legged stool, right? If organic outreach is great for you, that's great. Like, don't stop doing it, keep doing it, maybe even double down and do it a little bit more. But mixing in some other, strategies that's going to help you have sustained success. Because if you're only relying on one thing for success, what happens when that's gone, right? Like, what happened if LinkedIn changes their policies and you were getting all of your clients, all of your leads through LinkedIn? Now that's gone. If you don't have a plan B in place, or maybe not even a plan B, but a plan 1.2, then you don't want one thing to end up knocking your business down.
Well, I would also say that err on the side of caution if you're ever using something that isn't designed for marketing and advertising, that it's not a sustainable source, right? A little bit of business development here and there on an executive level, that's built into LinkedIn's design. Mass marketing through InMail is not. Mass marketing through connections is not. So, same deal with ads. If your business is not one that is the type that Facebook allows to run campaigns, meaning you have a business opportunity on a rev share, then you probably shouldn't focus all of your lead generation into Facebook for too long. So,
yeah, no, I agree. And that is something that, not everyone thinks about. They're just thinking if it works, it's working, but is that how it's supposed to work? Because maybe it's working now, but maybe that's not what's going to hold it up forever. Maybe I shouldn't duct tape that leg back onto the chair. It's going to work for today, but it's going to break eventually. And then
everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth,
right?
Don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, and so something else I know that we were going to discuss, and I think it's worth talking about is just going through a couple of recipes, and even aside from the recipes, just specific ingredients that we've seen some people have success with. And it's one of the reasons why we do this for our clients. We also do it for ourselves, right? If it works, it works. And something that we say all the time, but we refer to these recipes as proven recipes for success. And we say that because we're not guessing, right? This is something that we've seen in other people's business. We've done it in our business. And so we know that just like any other good recipe, if you have the ingredients, you follow the step-by-step process, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have some success, right? You may not be Gordon Ramsay or Russell Brunson, but maybe you don't have to be, right? And again, same thing like we discussed earlier, maybe the recipe that Russell Brunson's making today, maybe that's not the best recipe for you today, but maybe a recipe that Russell Brunson was using a few years back, maybe that one makes sense for you. And so, something that we also kind of briefly mentioned this before, and since we're talking about Russell Brunson, it makes sense to bring it up again, which is challenges. And something that, we've also discussed more is that, clients that we've seen run challenges that we've started working with, and then even people that we've seen run their own challenges and maybe not have as much success, it's because they're just looking at it kind of almost zooming out too far. And so they're missing a lot of the small details in between each step, right? And so that's the same thing as you can have, shrimp and rice, but as soon as you add in some lemon and some garlic, it's a lot different. And it's those small details that really makes it stand out. So something that we were also discussing, and this could almost be, I think, a recipe. We could, we've done it that way, but also looking at it as an ingredient and how it complements challenges. I think that's something really smart. And it's something that one of our past clients, this was their whole process for the most part. They would run challenges mixed in with a virtual dinner party, is what he called it. And was able to have this, before the challenge, after the challenge, in between. And it was another way to build up connections and really just amplify like the challenges that they were doing. Mikey, do you want to go into a little bit more detail on that?
Yeah, so it's been called a lot of things: a virtual dinner party, a virtual cocktail hour, whatever, what have you. The main takeaway is that it is an event that goes around your challenge or your boot camp, your masterclass, whatever it is, that is focused on engagement and gathering information. So, a general sales process, most people would say it starts with an introduction, and you got some information gathering or qualifying questions. Then you go into your presentation, which is tailored based off qualifying questions and the information that you've gathered. Then you have a little bit of an objection handling or trial closing. This is just making sure that you are the right fit before you ask for the ultimate decision, right? So having a standalone hour or 2 or even 3 around your actual sales and marketing engagement event that's designed to build that community, build that trust, and you're not pitching something, but gathering all the information allows you to really hone in and tailor your challenge when you're there. And frankly, it lowers the attrition rate. So you'll have more people stay all the way through. So it's pretty great.
Yeah, something that we discuss a lot in sales, at least from a lot of sales trainers, in terms of, so your business at the end of the day, it's aimed at solving problems. And so whatever prospect, lead, whoever it is you're speaking to, you want to focus on that problem because that's what you're there to solve. And people always mention, at least I've heard it, where it's detaching yourself from the sale. You're more focused on solving the problem than you are getting the sale. And it's hard to do sometimes, especially if you're a commission sales rep or you're a business owner, because you do need that profit coming in to help grow the business. You can pay your employees, keep the business going, but being able to truly detach yourself from the sale and just focusing on the problem that that person's having, how you can solve it. That's one thing as well. These events like a virtual dinner party, right, or a virtual cocktail hour, it helps as well, because if you set that, go in there with the mindset of, I'm not trying to make a sale right now, I'm trying to gather information to then help these potential clients. So then once they go through your event, then you can focus on converting to a client. But just if you're using it to gather information, things like that can be beneficial as well, because you can mentally set that block and detach yourself from the sale and just focus on information gathering and how to solve that problem for them.
Obsessing over a sale is one of the worst things that an entrepreneur or salesperson can do. If you are hyper focused on detaching someone from their money, you're looking in the wrong direction. There's nothing worse that you can do for yourself, your brand, your business, than try and shove a square peg into a bunch of round holes. If you're not the right fit for someone, it's your job to tell them that, and tell them that as early as humanly possible, so that you don't alienate them, so that you don't waste their time, and then they'll become a raving fan of yours, because frankly, there's just not enough good people out there in the world that stop, detach themselves from the sale, and do the right thing by everyone, regardless of their potential client or not.
Yeah, worth noting as well is that if you're in that more of like the beginning stages of your business, I think it's important. And sometimes, you can be guilty of it. It happens sometimes where you're, like you mentioned, you're just trying to get that sale. But if it's not the right fit, then it's just not the right fit. Especially if you're in the beginning stages of your business, you don't want to take on a client who you truly can't help, because that, if you don't have a ton of reviews, one bad review is going to stand out, immensely. So you want to make sure that it's people who are the right fit and you can actually solve that problem for them. Because again, like you mentioned, that's how you get your raving fans. And sometimes just being upfront with someone for saying, hey, sounds like this is your problem. I don't know if I'm the best fit to help you out with this, but maybe I know someone who can.
Yeah. Reputation over revenue. And like I always say, leave everybody in a better position than you found them. And sometimes that means on the road to somebody else's solution. Speaking of people in early stages of their business, how many entrepreneurs do we run into that are a solution in search of a problem? like can we address the value of market testing and how to determine what your actual market is, as just an aside for the people?
Yeah. So, I think a good example of this as well is, and maybe this is a little bit off, but I think it still goes with it, right? It's finding out what works, who you should be helping, what problem you should be solving. I think you and I both come from a background of which you are, a licensed attorney, but I did marketing consulting for attorneys in the past. And, I would work with a lot of personal injury, attorneys, and they're, maybe like you mentioned, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, where they're looking at, man, I really want to do this. I want to help people who are involved in trucking accidents. And we sit down and look at, well, what have you done in the past? And I'm like, well, I've worked with a lot of people who have needed help with boating accidents. And it's okay, well, you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It sounds like you already know who your audience is and you already have a solution for that. And it's fine to add other things on, but it's also in terms of, once you've already done that market research, you have that data. Sometimes it's just looking at the past, right? Who have you helped in the past? Which of your clients have had the most success? So who is that person? What have you done for them? How have you done it? Why were you doing that? And then also the when, right? So if you answer those questions, who, why, what, when, and how, in almost any situation, if you can answer those questions clearly, then you're going to have a ton of answers. And I think you're going to have a lot of clarity as well.
Yeah, I like to look at addressable and serviceable market. You know, that's that's pretty early on. But addressable market is well, addressable market is everybody out there that could use your solution, or that has that problem. And serviceable is which ones can we actually reach and help. Um, if you're not looking at those things and being realistic about yourself and your solution, and then comparing your solution to everything else that's out there in the market, you're not really doing the full amount of due diligence that you need to determine if you have a viable offer. It's not a crazy complex process. It it is one that is benefited by somebody that's done it before. But yeah, what would this makes me think of one of our recent clients. And I don't want to. I'll just call him B, so that we're not throwing out any names. But how many iterations of his offer did we go through before we actually landed on something that worked? And I think if memory serves, we suggested the correct direction and the right packaging and placement and everything else on the front end, but he had to get hit in the mouth a couple times before he actually came around to the right solution. If memory serves me, what was it, like 6 iterations over 6 months?
I mean, I think every like 2 to 3 weeks we were iterating something. Like what we're doing is retailing and repackaging, right? So every time we were getting on a sales call or going back and getting like listening to the feedback provided by the prospects, and every time we listen for what like the keywords, like, oh, that right there would be really cool. It's like, oh, but we never really talked about that. So we need to make sure that our messaging and our offer and our service curtails to that, because it does curtail to that, but we didn't do a good job of, like, as you mentioned, like iterating it or packaging it correctly. So every time we got more feedback and we got like KPI driven results, it was like, all right, this is what the market's telling us they want, even within this offer set. So we just need to provide that to them. And I mean, as you mentioned, there's a lot of like, no, I think we're good. Like, we're good right here. Like, as you mentioned earlier, I think we're good in our lane right here because these other individuals are super successful doing it. It's like, we understand these other individuals are super successful at doing that. So why would someone pick us or this offer over the guy that is super successful doing it, like at the same price point, at the same value? So like what you mentioned, it takes a lot of time. Sometimes, yeah, like 6, 7 iterations, getting punched in the mouth a bunch. And then hopefully round 6, you're like not too fatigued and beat up where you can't go back in there.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Guys, well, I think this was a great episode. I think we got into some good topics, right? And again, if anyone's listening to this is, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, if you're not familiar with us and our team over at funnelchef.io, that's where you can find us online, funnelchef.io. But what we do is we help coaches, consultants, and agency owners take proven recipes for success, implement it in their business so that they can attract more clients and generate more revenue, more profits for the business, all while avoiding guesswork and just, again, using proven processes and systems, aka recipes, to help grow their business. So if you'd like to learn more about us, you can go find us online, funnelchef.io. That's where you can go to our site, or you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or YouTube, pretty much anywhere on the internet. If you search it out on Google, you're going to find something. You can learn a little bit more about us. And, if you think that, you could benefit from using some proven recipes in your business, proven processes and systems to make your life easier, help you attract more clients, generate more profits, schedule a call with us. We just like doing a first introductory 15-minute phone call. We're not trying to sell you anything, kind of like what we discussed earlier. We want to see if we can actually help you, right? And if you're not the right fit, not everyone is the right fit. If we're not the right fit to work together, we can tell you and let you know. So, and potentially even point you in the right direction as well. So again, this is funnelchef.io. Find us online and let's chat.